very good. I feel like this advice video is a little bit unhinged because I'm painting while I'm giving advice. Whoa, color. Oh, pretty. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today is going to be a casual coffee crafting and chat video, and I am so excited. If you're new here, my name is Katie. I'm a third grade teacher in the state of Florida. I am currently on spring break, so we are just filming fun content and hanging out this week. Let's get started. Today is currently the second day of my spring break, like officially. Yesterday was Monday, today's Tuesday. I counted the weekend as my spring break too because you just feel lighter on the weekend over spring break. I can't explain it, but even like Saturday and Sunday just felt pleasant because I knew they were spring break Saturday and Sundays, and that made a huge difference. But anyways, all of that to say, here we are on Tuesday. I have a couple of goals for today's video, just a casual chit chat video. First off, I need to make my coffee, and a couple people have commented in recent weeks and asked to know how I make my coffee. So I'm just gonna make my iced latte with you guys this morning. Second, I'm working on a craft. Well, I'm gonna start a craft today. We'll see how far we get on it. And third, we're gonna do a little bit of chit chat because I put a question box on my Instagram story just asking you guys to drop some things that you were wanting some advice on. And I figured we'd do an advice style Q&A where you guys ask me a question and I give you my best advice. So let's get started with that. We're gonna start off with coffee because in order of importance, that is first. It's currently, what time is it? Like 10 o'clock. The clock's wrong because of daylight savings, but it's currently 10 o'clock and I have not had my coffee yet because we were out of milk and I had to go to Walmart for just a couple of random items. So I finished my groceries for this morning. It's time to make coffee, and then the crafting and chatting can follow. So if you're not at all interested in how I make my iced lattes right now, just skip forward to the next section of the video. All right, let's get started. David got this electric gooseneck kettle for Christmas, and we have loved it for heating up water for our coffees in the morning. I'm gonna grab all of my supplies from our little coffee station so that I'm ready to get started. We're gonna be using a mocha pot to make our espresso shots today. Both the kettle and the mocha pot will be linked in my Amazon storefront under non-teaching favorites. I'm using the Cafe Bustelo, is that how you say it, coffee grounds, and putting them into the middle section of the mocha pot and just kind of patting it down with a spoon so it's nice and compressed. Then for the mocha pot, you use it on the stove. So I take the gooseneck kettle and I fill the base of the mocha pot about to the little screw that you can see in this clip right here. Then you place the filter with the espresso grounds in the middle, and I use a towel because the base is hot to screw the top part of the mocha pot onto the base. Once it's tightened, it's ready to go on to the stovetop. So I just place it on the stove and I open up the lid so I can watch and see when the espresso starts to flow. You kind of just wait a little bit, and then eventually from the water underneath, the espresso will come out the top. Ta-da! I let it sit until it kind of starts to sputter, and then I put the lid back on and I take the mocha pot over to the sink just to rinse the bottom off with cold water so it'll stop percolating, is that the correct word? And then I pour my grounds into a cup. Usually I have some kind of brown sugar already at the bottom. Forgot to do that first today, so I just went back and put a little bit of brown sugar in the bottom afterwards. Just a spoonful or so. I don't usually measure. If I do measure, it's probably half a tablespoon of brown sugar. While that's kind of sitting, I get my cup ready, and today was an ice avalanche, but I fill it with ice and then with whole milk. Then I use a frother just to whip up the espresso. It kind of makes it nice and foamy, and I really like using the frother on it to get it ready to go. For today's latte, I'm making my own kind of foam creamer with heavy whipping cream. I usually just use about 1/4 cup, and then I use about 1/2 teaspoon of maple syrup. I'm beyond the days of measuring, so I just kind of guesstimate now. And today I put a little bit of vanilla bean sugar-free in there as well to give it some good flavor. Then again, I use the frother to get that ready to go, so it's like a homemade cold foam creamer type thing. All right, y'all, I'm a little sad. I set my camera up to do the big pour, which is the best part. So aesthetic and so pretty. And I poured my espresso into the milk and then put the foam on top, and then I forgot to press record. Facepalm. But here's my latte. It was really pretty pouring the espresso into the milk. If you've watched any of my vlogs, you've seen me do that in the mornings. Oh, what a freaking bummer. But anyways, I poured the espresso into the milk with the ice, and then I put the creamer on top. I was so bummed. Anyways, here's my latte. Let's give it a good taste. That's very good. Tastes like really good, and the coffee flavor comes out nicely with just a hint of the sweetness from the brown sugar and from the cream that I made. Oh, I'm so bummed that I didn't get that pour in there, but that is okay. All right, so let's get started with my craft next, which means I need to go change into some paint clothes, and I'll pick you guys back up in the garage. All right, let's get started with the craft portion of our video. I am painting a stool, and I'm just gonna chat with you guys while I work on it because I thought that would be fun. It sounds beautiful outside with birds in the background. I hope that's not distracting. I have a stool in my classroom. I'll pop a picture of it up on the screen that I absolutely love. My last year of teaching in Alabama, I painted this stool just as a fun paint project, and I have never gone back to the rocking chair. I absolutely love my teaching stool. It's so cute. It's so fun. And so I think it's just easier to get in and out of than a rocking chair was. And so I appreciated that greatly after having used the rocking chair for so long. And now that I teach third grade, I really don't need the rocking chair and I don't have space for it. Well, long story short, this stool turned up in my neighborhood, actually. We were driving home from church about a week ago and just saw this on the side of the road. Somebody was getting rid of it. And so David's already sanded the top part of it for me. And I'm just wiping it down now. It had a cushion on it, and we took the cushion off. And then he sanded the whole top part because it was a little bit icky from having adhesive that the cushion was sticking on. I feel like I need an extra foot on this, but that's okay. And so now I'm just gonna wipe it down with a Clorox wipe to make sure it's nice and clean and that we've gotten extra gunk off. And then it will be time. I think I'm gonna do a priming layer of white, and I'm gonna paint another teacher stool. The verdict is still out on what it's going to be used for. I'm gonna make it for somebody at my school, I'm pretty sure, but I just really wanted to paint a stool for fun because it was so fun to paint the last one. And so I was like, all right, this is free, this is spring break, this is craft time, so let's work on the stool. Now, that's kind of the backstory on the stool, and I'm just about done wiping it off so it's nice and clean. And then I'm gonna use a rag to dry off all the Clorox. And then I'll have to grab my white paint. I did not bring my paints out just yet. I'll grab my white paint, and most of it's already white down here. So I don't know if I'm gonna repaint the legs white. In fact, I probably won't. So I'll probably just need to do the top of the stool white, and then I'll be ready to do designs on the bottom. So that's actually gonna be really fun. But while I'm working on this, I figured let's do some advice Q&A. Feels weird because I haven't looked at the camera. I've been looking at this stool this whole time. But we're gonna do some advice Q&A. Okay, I think I'm gonna start by painting the top of the stool white. Let me get a little bit of white paint rocking and rolling. And then I'll look and pick what I want to do for the design for the rest of the stool. I'm gonna use this big foam brush here because that's what I've got. All right, let's get started with this Q&A. So again, I put this out on my Instagram story and I was like, just give me something that you want advice on. I've seen other YouTubers do this style of video and really enjoyed watching people and listening to people give advice. And so I was like, why not? We can do this too. So let's get started. The first thing that you guys asked for advice on was somebody asked for interview tips for teaching jobs. Okay, I'm gonna have to get on my knees. 1 second. Okay, much better. Interview tips for teaching jobs. Okay, so I've only interviewed for teaching jobs 3 times. Once to get my initial teaching job that I had in Alabama, and then I've had 2 different teaching jobs here in Florida. So keep that in mind. I've done 3 different teaching interviews, which is a pretty decent amount. Both times, things that I did to prepare for my interview. I would recommend going on to YouTube. You're halfway there, congratulations. And finding videos that people have made where it's questions, teaching interview questions. I think the one that I would recommend the most is one from Michelle from Pocket Full of Primary. I will link her video in the description below so you can find that specific one. I used her video greatly when I was practicing and prepping for my interviews. I just felt like she had a lot of good questions that she included in her video that were like, oh yeah, and they were like ones that made you think, if that makes sense. Made you really think about like your answer and how you would respond. And I practiced answering those interview questions. Like I typed up my answers for those questions and practiced them over and over again. So that would be my biggest tip for practicing for the interview questions. I would also recommend having some kind of portfolio or sample of something that you've done to take with you. I actually have an entire video, so I'll link that video as well. I have a whole video dedicated just to making a teaching portfolio, especially if it's your first teaching job. Like if you're a first year teacher and you don't have as much to put in the portfolio from like an actual classroom, maybe it's like from student teaching or from your teacher prep program. So I have a whole video on that, and you can kind of see I even use Michelle's template from Pocket Full of Primary for that video to kind of walk you through how I made a portfolio. And you can leave it with the people that you interview with if you want. I've never left it with them, but I use it as a guide, and it's there if they ask a question about a lesson plan that you use student collaboration or you integrated technology. Like I had some examples of those things in the book, so it was there for me to use if I wanted to. And in the process of preparing that teaching portfolio, I felt like that also helped me prepare for my interview because I was thinking through lessons and things that I had already done and really like thinking it through in my head, if that makes sense, about like what I would say and how I would explain a lesson to an administrator. All right, now I'm going to start to work on the legs. I'll probably do another coat of the white up top in a little bit. So one of the legs I'm going to make like a glue stick. So I'm going to paint one of them and just go over it with the white another time so that the white looks really good for the background of the glue stick. Just to touch it up. Although I didn't really have to do the top because the top's going to be orange, but that's okay. So we're going to touch up the white on this leg. Okay, next piece of advice that you guys were asking about was advice for student teaching. Sometimes when I do these Q&A videos or in this case, the advice video, I defer to old videos a lot. It's not because I want you to go back and watch old videos just so I get views on my old videos, but it's because I put a lot of thought into a lot of the videos that I make on my channel, and some of them are just old and you don't really find them unless you're searching for them. And I know some of you have just started following me recently, but I actually have a whole video that's dedicated to student teaching. I sat down and I was actually at Auburn because that's where I went to school, and I made like a whole entire video that was dedicated to my best advice for people who are about to do their student teaching. And so I'm going to drop that in the description box, and my best advice for student teaching would be to go watch my student teaching advice video, because I really sat down and thought about like what was like the biggest piece of advice or some of the biggest pieces of advice that I would have wanted to hear when I was starting my student teaching and that I wish I had known that would make my experience better. And I really put a lot of thought into that video, so I would recommend going to check out that video. I didn't even think to check and see how much paint I have like in each color, so I'm hoping I have enough paint to do all the designs that I want. If not, I'll probably only do part of it today anyways, because I'm gonna have to let layers dry and then go back and tape and do some stuff, so it'll be fine. All right, next piece of advice. Somebody asked me about staying motivated, and I'm not really sure what this was in relation to, like what they mean staying motivated for. Whoa, color. Oh, pretty. Okay, I don't know what they mean, like staying motivated for what, if there was something particular they had in mind about staying motivated for. So let's just say staying motivated in general. I think finding routines and habits that you enjoy is the easiest way to stay motivated. Like in teaching, I think finding things that you enjoy and finding like little things throughout the day that just, bring you joy. That's so generic because I'm just giving this advice off the top of my head. But also like in teaching, making a routine that is sustainable can help you stay motivated. And I think breaking things down that way and having a plan at school can help you stay motivated work-wise. If you're talking about things in your personal life or just staying motivated and not experiencing burnout, I would say finding a hobby or finding something that you enjoy doing and filling your extra time with that so you're not always consumed with teaching 24/7. For me, I enjoy crafting, I enjoy reading, I enjoy doing my workouts, and those things help me stay motivated at my job a little bit more because it gives me something more than just teaching to look forward to. So that one was a little vague, but the question was just advice on staying motivated. I would say make routines that are sustainable for you and find things that bring you joy. All right, I like that yellow. It's gonna have to dry for sure. So we may be moving on to a different color for a little bit while that happens. All right, next piece of advice. Advice for finding a church that feels like home and works for your family. Wow, that's a really good one. Let me find the next color that I'm gonna use while I think about the answer to that. All right, advice for finding a church home. Please forgive the noise in the background. The trash truck is going down the street. I didn't realize painting in the garage was going to be so noisy. This was something that David and I definitely had to do when we moved to Florida. So great question. First off, I think you need to just not be afraid to go try churches and find a way to just, maybe it's asking if you've lived in the area for a while, maybe that's asking other people for recommendations for churches that they've tried or that they've attended and they've liked. Or it could just be a Google search where you get online and you find a church that's in your area. Now, if you're doing a Google search, I would recommend that you look at their website in pretty great detail, and I would specifically try to find any page that has their statement of beliefs on it. You definitely want to find a church home with values that align with yours. So I would try to find their statement of belief page on their website and see if they have anything about what they believe. For example, you want it to be a church where they are Bible believing, they preach the gospel, they preach God's word, and there are a lot of different elements to that you want to just make sure that you're in alignment with. So that would be my first recommendation, is get some recommendations for a place, go online, check out their statement of beliefs before you even attend. But then you just kind of have to go, and it's weird and it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, especially if you're like me and I had a church that I attended for years and years, and so I hadn't had to go to a new church in a very long time. It felt weird to go somewhere new and to not know anybody and to just kind of go in blind, but you have to do it. David and I tried 2 or 3 different churches before we really felt like we found the one that fit us the best here where we live now. So don't be afraid to go, and you just have to go and attend and try, and then don't feel bad if it's not the right fit. Like we met some really nice people at a church in our area. We even had connections with them, like mutual friends from college, all kinds of things, but it just was not the church that we ended up landing at, and that's okay. So don't feel bad if you attend a church and you go and you visit. You're going to meet nice people wherever you go, but don't feel bad if that's not the one that you end up choosing. My next piece of advice for that would be to pray about it. But one of the things that we looked for in a church was we were looking, when we moved here, we were like, we're probably going to be here for a while. So we looked for a church that had solid ministries. And by that, I mean like, did they have a good kids ministry? So when David and I have kids one day, will there be a ministry that will serve our family in that way, where my kids could just come and get plugged in and there's a strong ministry there? Is there a good student ministry for here when our kids are in middle school? How are they investing in their students in the next generation? Do they have a strong ministry for that? Is there a young professional, young adult ministry, parenting ministry, marriage ministry? We really wanted to pick a place that we felt confident that whatever walk in our life, whatever phase in life or our Christian journey we were on, this church was going to have something to serve us in that stage. So that was one of the things that we really looked at, and I would encourage you to look at when you're looking for churches that'll serve your family as well. Even though you may not need those ministries now, like you may not have any kiddos that are in the student ministry age right now, but you want to know, like, when we get to that phase, is there going to be something that's strong, that's biblical, that's going to teach my kids good theology, support them, be engaging for them? Those are important things to think about, even if you're not in that stage quite yet. And again, if anybody's looking for a church, like, we don't even have kids, and we were looking to see, like, what is the kids ministry like? Is there already a kids ministry that's set up, that's running, that when we get to that stage, we can join in and we can be a part of? So that's my advice for finding a church that fits your family. All right, the good thing about this acrylic paint is it seems to be drying pretty quick out here, which is nice, because then I can do another coat. So I think I'm gonna do another coat of the white on the top, just to make sure that's pretty solid and covered. All right, let's see. Next piece of advice, somebody had, sticking with a workout after work. Oof. All right, this one is tough. Let me just tell you, this is not an easy thing to do. And my biggest piece of advice is probably not going to be super helpful for you. Find something that you enjoy doing, because if it's not something that you enjoy, you will not do it. Just straight up. And for me, what I've enjoyed is going to a local gym that does boxing and bar and bounce classes. I have so much fun in all of my classes, and that makes me want to go. Does it cost money? Yes. I have never been one to pay money for a gym membership, because paying to go to gyms and workout classes is expensive. But in this case, it's worth it. Now, unfortunately, I know that might not be feasible for everybody out there listening to pay for a gym membership. I had to sit down with David and say, like, I need you to run the numbers and look at the budget and really tell me with confidence that this is something that we can afford before I just willy-nilly sign up to do it. And David is a wonder worker with our budget. He really keeps track of finances, and he was like, we can afford to do this. You should do it. And he supported me in that, and I appreciate that greatly, because it is expensive, but I've been using this membership. I have an unlimited membership at the place that I go, and I go to classes 4 to 5 times a week. And that's probably the most consistent I've ever been at doing a workout. I did Beachbody for a little bit. I don't think it's called Beachbody anymore. I think it's just called Body. I did that at home for a while, picked that up around COVID times, and I really enjoyed the 10 rounds boxing program, and I enjoyed the Lift 4 program. I finished quite a few of those, but I just fell into a slump where I wasn't motivated, and I do better in group fitness class settings where I can kind of go in and just be on cruise control and let somebody else run my workout for me. And I also just love the boxing and the bounce and the bar classes. Like, the style of classes have been something that I really enjoy. So it's been a lot easier to stay motivated because it's something that I like. Being consistent in the word every day. All right, my biggest piece of advice for this is to do your devotional in the morning. And not everybody's a morning devotional person, so this is very specific to what I've found works for me. But I eat breakfast every morning before I leave the house. I'm really not going to leave the house without eating breakfast. Therefore, I do my devotional during my breakfast time, because if I don't leave the house without eating breakfast, that means I don't leave the house without getting in God's word. And that's what's worked for me. I also would say my other piece of advice for staying consistent in the word is I do like a devotional book. I have 2 that I like. They're both in my Amazon storefront. If you click on the link in my description and you go to non-teaching favorites, you'll find them. One of them is New Morning Mercies, and one of them is Truth for Life. I like both of those. They're pretty quick devotionals that you could do in the morning, and having a devotional, like a set devotional that I do, is helpful for me, because then I don't have to, again, kind of like the workout, I don't really have to sit and just say like, oh, what do I want to do today? I already have a plan, and the plan is the devotional that's in that book. So I would recommend both of those if you're looking for a simple way to get started with your quiet time in the morning. Okay, next, ooh, this is a good one. I might change camera angles because we've been sitting right here for a while before I answer this one, because this one's good. Okay, the next one was advice for switching schools. Okay, this one is, this is a good question because I am somebody who has experience in that area. Let me tell you, first of all, there is no shame in switching schools, and there is a school out there for everyone. So if you are in a situation right now where you are at a school and you just don't think it's a good fit, that is okay. Don't think there's anything wrong with you. Let's just start there. Because when I first started teaching, I taught in Alabama at the school that I interned at. And so I already knew the principal, I knew my coworkers, I knew my classroom because it was the same grade, same team that I had interned with, right? So I loved that school. And it was the only school that I had experienced outside of my practicum placements in college, of course. And I loved it. Then fast forward, and we moved to Florida for David's job. And the first school that I was at, let's just say it was not it. I did not feel like I fit in really. I was on a smaller team. I was used to being on a team with 8 ladies, and I was on a team where I was one of 3. Like, there was nothing wrong with my team. I just didn't feel like I clicked with anybody, and being somebody who was new to a town, I really needed somebody that I could click to and be friends with, because I knew nobody, and so it was really, really miserable for a year. Yeah, it was really miserable for a year. You guys actually helped pull me through that year in a big way because I did a lot of YouTube videos that year. And I felt a lot of support online from people who were like, hey, I love your videos, all of this stuff, where I didn't feel like I had as much in-person support from my school personally. It just wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good fit. There are lots of reasons we could go into it, but I'm also not here to like talk bad about a school because it was a good fit for some people. That was the thing. Like, there were people who were really happy there and who had taught there for years and years and years, which made me feel like there was something wrong with me for not liking it, right? Like, oh my gosh, all of these people are all in, they love this school, and I'm just struggling here, and that made it really hard. I'm gonna pause for a second now that the personal story part is done. Before I get into the advice, let me go get another paintbrush and maybe another plate for a different color of paint. Okay, we're gonna do this leg next. I think that yellow and the teal looks really, really good. Okay, so next part of the story. So I decided to switch schools, and now that I've decided to switch schools, I look back and I'm like, I'm so glad I decided to do that. So my first piece of advice is you're not alone, you're not weird, and it's not a problem that you don't like where you are. There is a school out there for everybody, and my advice is to just do it. And it really sucks when you have to go tell your admin that you're leaving, especially if you don't want to like share all the reasons why you're leaving. Like, you don't have to give them all the reasons. I'd say pick a reason that you want to share, that you feel comfortable sharing, so when they ask, you know what to say. Stick with that, and then just leave. And know that there's a school out there for everybody, and that moving classrooms sucks, but it doesn't suck as much as staying in a place that you're unhappy. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just, first off, know you're not alone. Know that it doesn't make you a bad teacher, that you feel like you just can't get something right in a space, because I was like, okay, I know I'm not a bad teacher, but I'm having a rough year here. And I couldn't figure out why. And part of it was just because I needed to switch schools and be somewhere else, and that's okay. Because then my next year was like one of my favorite years of teaching ever. I met people on my team that I love and adore, that I'm friends with. It was just a better fit. So switching schools, I say do it. Just let this be your sign to do it, even though it's scary. I also feel like this advice video is a little bit unhinged because I'm painting while I'm giving advice. So I'm just kind of rambling a little bit too. So if this feels a little bit rambly, I'm so sorry. because when I went in to get paint, I was like, gosh, I don't even know if I remember what I just said because I'm trying to multitask. So there you go. That makes this real and raw advice, right? Because, all right, next piece of advice is somebody said, do you have any advice for having a student teacher? I wish I had more advice for this. I was going to have a student teacher last year in the fall, and she started with me for a few weeks, and then for just personal reasons for her, she had to return home for the semester, and so I didn't get to finish out the semester with her. But I have had some practicum students, and I had a wonderful practicum student in the fall this year from one of the local universities around me. And one of the things that I learned from having her that I think would be also beneficial for a student teacher is observe them teaching and take notes of their teaching as they teach. That was something that I know I did that she appreciated and that I would recommend you doing. I kept a notepad and I took notes on two things for her because she was in a class that focused on math instruction. And so I kept a note on her lesson, and when I took notes, I split it down the middle. And on one side, I took notes of anything that she did math related that I thought was strong. Like, wow, you really questioned this student's strategy, or you encouraged them to use math vocabulary here, etc. And then on the other side, I took notes of anything she did management-wise. Good or needed improvement. Like, oh, you told students they had 10 seconds to do this and then their hands need to be on their head. That was great expectations. The students knew what to do. Or, oh, you gave them this paper, but you didn't really give them the expectations. Or you gave them this manipulative and you didn't give them the expectations before. And so some of the students were fidgeting with the materials. So next time when you use them, explain X, Y, and Z first and then pass the materials out. So things like that. And I felt like that was a really good way to take notes on her teaching, to give her feedback in two different areas that are super important. Her content area that she's studying and supposed to be practicing and teaching, and then also in management, because management was something that I wish I had way more practice and way more knowledge of when I was doing student teaching or practicum. And so I just felt like that was an area that I wanted to make sure I gave her strong feedback in. And she told me that a lot of the girls in her practicum class were super jealous when they saw the notes that I took, because they were like, oh, my practicum teacher barely even watched me. I think I just painted over the one that I was going to do as the glue stick. Dang it. Oh well. But they were like, my practicum teacher barely even watched me. She never takes notes or gives me good feedback like this. So be present and give them feedback would be one piece of advice. And other than that, I'm sorry I don't have that much, but I've watched my neighbor teacher have an intern, and one of my teacher best friends has had interns since I've been at this school. And a piece of advice from them, like just from watching them, is, well, one, my teacher best friend who has interns, she's very strategic with her intern. She lets them do a lot of observing, but she always gives them tasks when they're observing. So afterwards they debrief and she says, okay, tell me what you noticed about X, Y, and Z. So if she has her intern observing, she makes sure it's purposeful observation. And I love that. So there's something for a student teacher. And then the teacher next door to me has an intern this year. And my biggest piece of advice from watching her that I loved is she just throws her intern into it. And I would have been terrified, but in a good way. She'll pull something and she says, hey, we're doing small group lessons tomorrow and it's going to be on prepositional phrases. I want you to plan something for this group. Go. And I'm like, that is such great practical experience. And she just utilizes her, like keeps her busy, gives her things to do. And not busy in a bad way. I just mean like is always involving her and giving her things to plan and then giving her feedback on what she planned, of course. But the way she has her just jump in and she's like, all right, you're doing this tomorrow, go, is inspiring to me. I'm like, dang, that is so good and such great experience for her. So just throw them in there, have them do some stuff. I know that doesn't sound like the nicest, but that would be my piece of advice that I've learned from my teacher next door having an intern. All right, I think we're getting close to the end of the list. Brand new kindergarten teacher, classroom supplies, advice. What do I need? For this individual, I know you're going to be so shocked that I'm recommending one of my old videos. I have two videos that are classroom must-haves. I would recommend going to watch both of those because I share some things that are not grade level specific that I love in my classroom. that I would recommend people buy. Don't buy anything that's too grade level. Well, okay, this specific person said they're going to be in kindergarten, so if you want to buy things that are kindergarten friendly, go for it. But if you don't know your grade level, don't buy anything that's too classroom specific, and really think through your purchases. Start to think before you go buy stuff. Start to think through some of your routines and how you want your classroom management to rock and roll. That way you can buy things that help you with that. And I would also recommend, if you already know your school and you can already see your classroom, like go look at that first before you start to just go buy things, because you may find that there's things in the classroom that are already provided, or you might go into the classroom and see like, wow, I do not have that much storage in here. I need to buy storage bins, etc. So look and see what you have and what's provided before you just go spend willy-nilly. But I do have 2 videos. I'll link them in the description box so you can look and see what are some of the things that I say are classroom must-haves that I've purchased and used over my 7 years of teaching. Okay, and then the last one, and then obviously my crafting is not quite over, but we'll be closing up this video because I'm just gonna have to wait in between layers for paint to dry. And you don't wanna sit here and watch paint dry. Neither do I, honestly. I'll probably go inside and like work on something, I don't know. But my last piece of advice, last thing that you guys asked for advice on was being departmentalized. I guess you guys were just kind of wanting to know my thoughts and any advice that I have there. My advice, if you're going to be departmentalized and you haven't been, is to lean into the positives, because there's positives and negatives for everything. And so I would say to lean in and really focus on the positives of being departmentalized. The positive being you are going to be an expert in the subject that you're teaching. And I have loved getting to be a reading expert this year and really feeling like I know what I'm doing when I'm teaching reading to my class. And being an expert in that way has been fabulous. There are challenges. Management is a challenge. Switching classes is a challenge. I feel like there's a part of my students that I don't really know because I don't know them as mathematicians. And that's been an extra challenge or an extra hurdle. But I would say lean into the positives if you're going to be departmentalized, and really work with your partner teacher on streamlining as much as you can. Streamline your communication, do that together. Streamline your classroom management as best as you can, because I know everybody has different styles and different things that they do. But if your main structure is the same, that's going to help students and that's going to help parents. Because I feel like that's been one of the struggles, is like getting on the same page and feeling like everything's on the same page, because there's just so many things that you don't realize that you do in your classroom because you do them on your own. And then when you're departmentalized and you're communicating with another teacher, it's like, oh, I didn't even think to explain or to ask and see if she wanted to XYZ fill in the blank. So communicate, and lean into the positives. You're going to be an expert in your craft and in your specific subject area. And it's so much fun to feel like you know what you're doing in your subject area, and to be able to pour so much time and effort and energy into that subject area, because you don't have to think about all of the others, if that makes sense. All right, and I think that's where I'm going to end my video for today. Obviously, the stool is not done, but you can only do so much. You got to do like all the base layers first. And I'm realizing that I'm going to need some more paint, because I want to do all of these white, black with white polka dots. And like, I don't have a lot of black left. This is not even full. So I'm going to definitely need to make a list of paint colors that I need to pick up. But one day in the future, this stool is going to be beautiful, and I have spring break to just kind of work on it at my leisure and do some therapeutic painting whenever I feel like it. So thank you guys for joining me to kickstart this craft off. It was fun to just chat while I had my coffee and while I did a craft on a Tuesday afternoon over spring break. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. This was a really casual, chill video. I usually have like teaching advice, Q&A, mostly teacher vlogs on my channel, and I'd love to have you subscribe. If there's something else that you're like, ooh, I'd love your advice on XYZ, drop that in the comments, and I love responding to y'all's comments, so I can try to give you some advice in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one.